Welcome to today's webinar entitled Hey Bird Brain. My name is Billy Zadig, Manager of Special Programs for APA. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. The webinar recording will be posted to the APA website later this afternoon. Please visit our website at www.apa.org to register for upcoming events and to view archived webinars for continuing education credits found under the Continuous Learning tab. Professional continuing education and AIA-CLU certificates are being offered for today's program. If you're an AIA professional, please send an email to me at Billie, B-I-L-L-I-E, @apa.org, along with your AIA membership number if you've not done so in the past. Those who indicated they wanted a certificate at registration and meet the requirements will receive certificates later this afternoon. All attendees are in listen-only mode. Please type your questions in the chat box and they will be answered in the order they are received. If we run out of time and we still have questions, responses will be sent directly to the person asking the question by our presenter. If you are just calling in, make sure you send me an email at billie@apa.org so I can send you a certificate if you would like one. The system only recognizes you if you log in. Before we get started, let me give you a little background information on Beth. She is the Education Program Manager for the Penn State Facilities Engineering Institute. Beth leads the organization's education program and related services while working collaboratively with the staff and leaders in the Institute's other service areas. Beth brings over 24 years of experience in finance, business, and education, including 18 years with Penn State's Office of Physical Plant and more than 6 years with T. Rowe Price Associates, Inc., an investment firm in her hometown of Baltimore, Maryland. Her area of expertise include public speaking, presentations, and group facilitation, organizational change management, fiscal responsibility, efficiency, and accountability, and strategic planning. Beth earned a bachelor's degree in business administration finance from Towson University and a master's degree in college student affairs from Penn State. She is a certified education facilities professional through APA and serves on the certification board. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the adventure that Beth is going to take us on. Beth, take it away.
Thank you, Billie. Good afternoon. Oh, I am unmuted, right, Billie? Yeah, okay, now she's muted. All right, let's try this again. Good afternoon, everyone in the Central and Eastern time zones. Good morning to those of you still in the Pacific and Mountain time zones, and good day to those of you who will choose to enjoy this presentation via the APA YouTube channel at some other time. Welcome to Hey Bird Brain. Just a quick couple of housekeeping things here. This is an AIA accredited webinar, so these next couple of slides are required for us to continue. This just explains that it has been presented to AIA and approved. Our course description is here. It is what was included on the APA website as a description. And our learning objectives are also here, also included on the APA website and also included in the emails that went out about this webinar. Let's take a look at our agenda here. Billie did a great introduction. Thank you so much. I'm going to talk a little bit more about who I am and why I'm doing this particular webinar. We will set our intentions. We'll talk about why the insult. We'll learn some lessons from nature. We will then connect with nature. We'll review the resources as part of this presentation, and then we'll have time for questions. And as Billie said, if you do have questions, please drop them in the chat. So one quick note about safety. I would be a terrible CIG, if I didn't do this as part of my introduction, if you are in a space that is unfamiliar to you, please take the time now to look up and around to locate the exits nearest to you, that in the event of an emergency, you can leave your area in a quick and efficient manner. And if it does just happen to be a drill, hopefully you will come back to this webinar as soon as possible. But if you do experience an emergency during this webinar, please take care of yourself and those around you. All right. So here I am being a big dork outdoors, but that's what I like to do when I'm not working as the Education Program Manager at the Penn State Facilities Engineering Institute, which I'm now in my 3rd month of this brand new job, and I am over the moon about it. I like to be outdoors. I like to, as you can see here, cross-country ski. I like to hike. I like to canoe. I like to camp. We just spent the weekend camping with friends and family. As part of that, you can see there, Billy, talked about the fact that I'm a CEFP. I am an APA Leadership Academy instructor. I am a past president of the Eastern region of APA, and I am the past vice president, the last one actually, vice president for professional development for APA. But all this outdoor stuff, this comes from the fact that I am a Pennsylvania Master Naturalist. It's something that I've been doing now for 2 years. It's something that I had wanted to do for 3 years prior to that, before I even, once I found out it existed, I wanted to do it. And finally, the program reached Center County here in smack dab in the middle of Pennsylvania. And I was certified as a Pennsylvania Master Naturalist in 2020. If you're familiar with Master Gardener in your state, there is probably a corresponding Master Naturalist program in your state as well. Just means that we're educated in the natural history of the physiographic province within which we live. That's a lot of words. It just means that, wherever you live, your state is probably divided into what we call physiographic provinces. I live in the Ridge and Valley area of Pennsylvania, so the training that I received is specific to the Ridge and Valley area. So I can be a Master Naturalist here in Center County and in Huntington County, some parts of Clearfield and Clinton County, but I can't go up and profess to know things about Erie, Pennsylvania, for example, because it's a different physiographic province. It's up on the lake, there's different flora, there's different fauna. So I know that's a lot of information, but I'm an outdoor nerd, right? So when I found this Master Naturalist program, I glommed onto it as fast as I could. And in the last 2 years, I have found so many opportunities and experienced so many things out in nature that relate back to problems I was having in the office, or personal issues, or conflicts, or challenges, or project management. There is a nature lesson for almost everything that we encounter at home and in the workplace. And we're going to visit a few of those today. The last thing listed there, I said I'd be a terrible CIG if I didn't address your safety as a certified interpretive guide, which is a new certification for me as of this spring. It just means that I can take environmental education, or any type of education actually, and not just present to you the facts, but present them in a way that is both relatable and actionable. So, quick example, I can tell you black oil sunflower seed is great to feed the birds in your backyard. That's a fact, right? If I tell you though that feeding black oil sunflower seed to birds is similar to hosting a dinner party for them, because black oil sunflower seed, well, it feeds a crowd. Think of it like the lasagna of the bird world, right? It feeds a crowd, it appeals to many different people, and it's easy to serve and clean up. Well, that takes the fact that black oil sunflower seed is good food for birds and makes it relatable, because how many of us have had lasagna and or been to a dinner party? And maybe actionable. Maybe now that you know that it's easy to feed and it's going to attract a lot of birds, you're going to go put a black oil sunflower seed feeder out in your backyard. That's the difference between environmental education and interpretation, and that's what I'm now certified in. All right, let's move into setting our intentions. The purpose of setting our intentions is to get us in the right frame of mind to learn together. So let's start by taking a few deep breaths together. And this will be practice for later in the presentation. So what I want you to do is breathe in through your nose deeply, out through the mouth. No shallow chest breathing here. You don't want your shoulders heaving up and down with each breath, but rather, if you are able to either stand or sit up straight, put a hand on your abdomen and feel your abdomen expand as you take these full, deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, right? If it's already been a particularly stressful day for you, maybe you've got a little pent-up tension or, dare I say, rage. On the exhalation out through the mouth, you can even make some noise. If you're in a private space, go for it, right? You happen to be doing this in a conference room with another group of people, I don't know, rein it in. Or, maybe let them know that you have this pent-up tension. So in through the nose, out through the mouth, right? One more time, in through the nose, out through the mouth. All right, those deep breaths are going to come in handy in a little while. But for now, we have 3 intentions today during this session. The first is to drink water. We encouraged you to have an ample supply of drinking water nearby, and I want you to use it. The human body is approximately 60% water, so it is important to stay hydrated, not just during this webinar, not just today, but all day, every day. Our second intention is to get rooted, as represented by the tree on this slide. I'm hopeful that you're in a comfortable seat with your feet flat on the ground and your back straight. No slouching, no feet up on the desk. This comfortable seated position will be important later in the presentation as well. And our final intention, admittedly, is a little punny. Our final intention is to be ready to learn. I fully and freely admit that this session may be like none other that you've attended, and I'm hopeful that it'll create quite a buzz among those of you who are here today. All right, so let's talk about the title of this session. Hey, bird brain. You may have thought to yourself, well, that's a little insulting. If you're like most people, you may consider the term bird brain to be disparaging, right? What a dodo, what a loon, what a bird brain. The fact is, birds are highly intelligent. Crows, for example, can count. If 3 hunters go into a hunting blind and only 2 emerge, the crows in the area know to stay away until that 3rd hunter comes out, even if it means they need to wait an hour or more. And then we have our bird friend here on this slide. This is Clark's nutcracker, no relation. Scientists who have studied these birds have noted that in one fall season, a single nutcracker may store tens of thousands of pine seeds in as many as 5,000 different mini cache locations. They don't mark the spots, and there's no indication that anything is buried below ground. In fact, when it comes time for the birds to need these mini caches of pine seeds, the caches are usually covered with snow. These birds manage to remember the exact location of every cache without GPS, without a map, and without Post-it notes. How's that for a bird brain? Crows and nutcrackers are but two examples of just how wicked smart birds are. So the next time someone calls you a bird brain, smile and say thank you. I'm going to kick off our lessons from nature today by beginning with the natural object that you have there with you. Some of the suggestions that were emailed to you were an acorn or a pine cone, or maybe the plant in your office or a rock. I have both an acorn and a pine cone with me here today. And we're going to draw lessons from nature from both of them individually and specifically. But for now, I want you to focus on whatever natural object you have there with you. I want you to hold it in your hands. Rotate it around to get a good look. Looking at it from arm's length gives you a good picture. But what about up close? If you really look at it up close, are there fine details you hadn't yet noticed? Is there something about the detail that makes you appreciate it more? Let's begin to think about this object even more. What is the texture? Is it rough and harsh on your fingertips? Is it smooth? Is it prickly? Or is it some combination of both? How strong is your object? Is it hard and unyielding? Would it take extreme pressure or a tool to crack it? Or is it soft and pliable, bendable, moldable? What about fragile? Just as you may have begun to think about how you would describe your natural object, I'd like you to think about how others might describe you. Would they use some of the same phrases or descriptions? Are you hard and unyielding, a my way or the highway kind of person? Might you be perceived as having a rough, gruff exterior, a hard nut to crack, so to speak? Do others find you prickly? Or are you soft and pliable, easily influenced? Do you flutter and sway whichever way the wind blows? A blade of grass takes the sunshine, water, and nutrients from the soil it has available to it and presents the best version of itself. An oak tree puts all its best qualities into its acorns to grow new oak trees in its likeness. A pine tree does the same with the seeds it stores in pine cones. Both trees present their best possible selves with what they have available to them: water, food, sunshine, and space. Some trees grow in very precarious places, and yet they thrive. Are you thriving? And better yet, are you presenting your best possible self? How are you presenting your best possible self? And are you doing it just at arm's length, where everyone can appreciate you? Or are your best qualities those that require careful observation? Just as these natural objects presented themselves to us today, we too present ourselves to the world. We have endured an extraordinary amount of stress in the last 2+ years, and it can be very easy to revert to behaviors that make us appear not so glamorous in the face of adversity. As we progress through our other lessons from nature, I hope that you will remember that you have control over how you respond to stress and adversity, and those responses can influence how others see you. And it's my hope that you will retain your natural object and keep it somewhere as a reminder of that. My pine cone sits on my desk with me. Our second lesson from nature comes from the oak tree. Oak trees drop acorns to grow new oak trees, right? We talked about that. The ones that drop just below the parent tree, they may sprout and thrive as they outcompete all the other acorns that have dropped directly below the parent tree and compete from the resources with established trees all around. But acorns that are moved and buried or cached by squirrels may find more hospitable growing conditions away from the parent tree where it can thrive on its own. In this case, the squirrel is like a mentor, helping the acorn by introducing it to a new environment or place and giving it a literal nudge to grow as it tamps down the soil atop the acorn. The acorn could do just fine on its own, but with a little help from its friend, the squirrel, there's greater potential. So who has been your squirrel? Who has figuratively, or maybe even literally, given you the nudge to succeed? Who has encouraged you to look for growth opportunities? Who has provided them for you? Can you think of someone or someones? Now consider, when was the last time you thanked them? Simpler than that, when was the last time you spoke with them? If the physical distancing required during this pandemic has taught us anything, it's that social connection is important. It's vitally important. Maybe you've always counted on in-person conferences and training opportunities to connect with your squirrels, share a meal together, maybe a few beverages. Until we can do that again, and those opportunities are coming, and I'm so excited, remember to remain connected to those individuals you've looked to for guidance, support, encouragement, or used as a sounding board. If it's been a while since you've connected with your squirrels, I'll share a lesson with you that I recently learned from one of my squirrels. She goes by the name of Julie Brown. It's as easy as drafting an email or starting a phone conversation with the phrase, "I've been thinking about you." Use that simple conversation starter to reconnect, and when you do, thank them. Even if it's been years since they helped you move your acorn, you can always remind them of how meaningful their help was. Now let's flip this around a bit. How can you be a squirrel? Have you identified acorns you can help? Has someone approached you for mentorship? Being a mentor can conjure up fears of monstrous time commitments when sometimes all someone needs is 15 minutes of your time and the wisdom of your years. People get wrapped up in the idea of formal mentorship programs, which are great, but mentorship can be as informal as listening to someone else's idea about running for a board seat for their local chapter or region, and you talking about your personal experience in that role. Don't be afraid to be a squirrel. Our third lesson from nature comes from the pine cone. The pine cones, as you know, house the seeds of the pine tree. When they open, the seeds disperse. When we think of pine trees, we tend to think of serene winter scenes of snow-covered pines, their boughs bending under the weight of newly fallen snow. It's peaceful, isn't it? It's a great image for a Hallmark Christmas card or a Thomas Kincaid painting. But consider the fact that the lodgepole pine likes quite the opposite scene. To humans, Wildfires are scary and dangerous. But to the lodgepole pine cone, oh, they are their opportunity to shine. When these pines grow, their cones are tightly sealed with a layer of resin and woody tissue that keeps the cone's scales together. The seeds are locked in tight, and the cones can't open unless they're exposed to very high temperatures, like the kind provided by a wildfire. The scientific term for this type of seed that requires an environmental trigger is serotinous. For the lodgepole pine, that trigger is heat. Life is often difficult, and there can be any number of environmental triggers coming at us from every which direction at any time. It's harsh, it's stressful, and it may feel like our own personal forest fire. Better yet, our own pot of boiling water. The environments in which we find ourselves test who we truly are. They change us in some way. If you've completed level 1 of APA's Leadership Academy, maybe even with me as your instructor, you will recall from habit 1, be proactive, the idea that between any stimulus and response, there is space where we have the freedom to choose how we will react. We can be like an egg placed in hot water and harden in the face of stress and adversity. We can be like a carrot in hot water and soften as a result of those environmental triggers, and if left in long enough, turn to absolute mush. Or we can be like the coffee bean. In hot water and with time, a coffee bean presents its best possible self. It transforms the hot water into a magical elixir that some of us need copious amounts of. And much like a coffee bean, we can harness the power within ourselves to transform any hot water environment into one in which we can thrive. Now, let's imagine that you just completely whiff on an important deadline at work, right? Regardless of the reasons or the circumstances that led to this failure, you do, in fact, fail to deliver. You have one of 3 choices. You can harden against the circumstances, toughening up for the onslaught from the critics and the blamers, quantifying and qualifying your excuses, preparing to defend yourself to the bitter end. Or you can soften in response to the situation, crumbling under the pressure of so many priorities, crying to yourself, whining to others, and appearing weak. Or you can harness the lessons learned from the experience. Success is not permanent, but more importantly, failure is not fatal. Out of every failure comes at least one, but often many, opportunities to learn and grow. And if you take responsibility for your actions, or in our example, inactions, and make a plan for moving forward, you can recover from your failure and transform as a result of the experience. So whether you consider yourself a coffee bean or a lodgepole pine cone, the next time you find yourself in hot water or your feet being held to the fire, harness that power and release your best possible self. Take a second right here. Everybody grab a sip of that water that's sitting there with you. I'm going to do it too, and we'll move on. All right. Our final lesson from nature today comes to us from leaves and grasses. Some of you may have grabbed a leaf or a blade of grass as your natural object for today's webinar. Consider the single leaf or the single blade of grass for a moment. If you have one there, hold it by the stem to your ear and wave it back and forth. Or spin the stem between your fingers. You don't have one, imagine it. Do you hear anything? Could you hear anything if you were doing that? Probably not much, if any, appreciable sound, right? Now think back to the last time you were outdoors, maybe in your backyard or on a hike or even camping. Recall the last time you heard the wind blow and all of the leaves on the trees or all of the tall grasses rustle. What did that sound like? Why did those leaves or grasses rustle? You may have heard the wind, but did you listen? Was it merely a gentle breeze? Was it nature's chatter that didn't warrant your consideration? Or was it a gusty wind bringing rain and storms behind it? Was it nature speaking directly to you, demanding your attention and action? Now let's think about your coworkers, your subordinates, your bosses in the workplace, and your partners, children, family members, and friends at home. Do you too often treat conversations with them as gentle breezes or idle chatter? Can you tell when conversations demand your attention and action? You may be hearing, but are you listening? Again, if you've completed level 1 of APPA's Leadership Academy, you will recall that habit 5 of Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is to seek first to understand, then be understood. It is the habit of empathic communication, and the first half of the habit, seek first to understand, is rooted in the idea of empathic listening. When you listen empathically, you get out of your own story and into the story of the other person. You listen with the intent to understand rather than the intent to reply. You suspend judgment and your point of view long enough to understand, and you listen from a place of neutrality. Empathic listening is needed when emotions are high or real understanding is needed to get to the heart of an issue. When the gusty winds warn of tumultuous weather and demand your attention and action. And empathic listening requires more than your ears. Yes, you must listen for words and feelings, but you need your voice to reflect those words and feelings back to the speaker to confirm understanding. And you need to use your eyes to check for nonverbal cues, especially those that seem to contradict the spoken message. If you and I are having a conversation and I say, I'm happy, it's the best possible outcome, and I'm confident that things will work out. If I say it like that, do you believe me? The words may be positive, and if I wrote them in an email, you may read them as positive. But the feelings reflected in my tone of voice and my posture, if you could see it, and the lack of eye contact say otherwise. You can reflect the words and feelings back. I hear you say that you're happy and confident that things will work out, but your body language and tone of voice don't quite match up. At this point, you can add a clarifying question to stay with the conversation and dig a little deeper. A simple, can you tell me more, can suffice. Or you can get specific. When you say it was the best possible outcome, what do you mean by that? The intent with your follow-ups should always be to understand the speaker. Ideally, you should always approach every conversation with an empathic ear, listening for the cues that true understanding is needed. Some conversations, many conversations, may quickly reveal themselves to be those gentle breezes of idle chatter that do not require as much effort on the part of the listener. But you should always be listening instead of hearing. Under the right or really wrong conditions, a gentle breeze can escalate into a ferocious storm without much warning. And empathic listening will always be your lifeline. So those are our lessons from nature. Now, we're going to take some time to connect with nature. So grab another sip of water. And I'm going to ask you to reroute yourself. Feet flat on the ground or crossed at the ankles, sitting up straight. And I invite you now to close your eyes to begin to focus. We're going to focus first on our breath. We're going to take 5 of them together, nice and deep. In through the nose and out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. 2 more. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Last one together, in through the nose, out through the mouth. That practice right there, the taking of 5 deep breaths with your eyes closed, can be enough to help you center yourself in a moment of stress or when you need to buckle down and focus on a particularly difficult task. Now, continuing with our eyes closed, let's perform a brief body scan, recognizing, acknowledging, and releasing any areas of tension, making sure that our shoulders are down and away from our ears and rolled back, making sure our jaw isn't tense, and continuing to scan for other areas of tension and purposefully relaxing them. You can squeeze your hands together and relax them. You can squeeze your feet and relax them. Nice and loose now, ready for this experience. I want you, with your eyes closed, to imagine your favorite outdoor spot. It could be the edge of a lake, it could be the beach, it could be the hammock in your campsite. It could be an Adirondack chair on your back deck. But in your mind's eye, imagine that favorite outdoor spot. Choose that place to remain through the rest of this exercise. Now I invite you to release judgment. Purposefully release judgment of yourself and anyone else who might be in the room with you participating in this webinar today. This meditation we're about to do, this experience is yours and yours alone. So keep your eyes closed, no peeking to see what anybody else in the room is doing, and no judgment. Now acknowledge the purpose of this meditation and allow yourself to fully experience the setting, the time, and the place that you've chosen. With your place in mind, I invite you to awaken your senses. If we were all together outside in a shared space, we would stay in this space for about 15 minutes to allow all 5 of your senses to engage. But in this experience, recall your place and imagine how it might engage your 5 senses. What do you smell? What do you hear? In your mind's eye, what do you see? What are you touching? And what, if anything, can you taste? Slow down in this experience. Nature is in no rush. You shouldn't be either. Imagine walking slowly around this place you've chosen. One step at a time. Listen to the leaves crunch under your feet. Feel the sand between your toes. The gentle breeze kiss your face. The taste of the salt air on your tongue. The sound of the birds chirping in the trees overhead. Slow down and experience all of it. Relate to your surroundings. Get to know them. Feel your surroundings. Imagine how the bark of a tree would feel to your fingertips. Listen for the birds, or the crickets, or the waves, or the breeze. See all of the colors of nature, from what's under your feet all the way to the sky. Play. Let yourself be curious. Imagine picking up a rock to look for salamanders if you're in the forest. Or imagine picking up a small stone at the water's edge and skipping it across the water. Or imagine picking up a rock in a creek and looking for macroinvertebrates like stonefly nymphs or caddisfly nymphs. Be with yourself, not your thoughts. Be present. As your mind wanders, acknowledge the thoughts and think, not right now. Bring yourself back to your place in nature. Continue to mentally explore this place. Or imagine settling in against a tree, or sitting in the sand, or easing into a chair at a lake's edge, and just be. I will now be silent for a minute or two so that you can continue to enjoy your mental visit. Be grateful for this time you've spent with yourself, for this time that you've remembered nature, and more broadly, for this time that we've had together today. And now I'll ask you to begin to return to awareness, first by wiggling your fingers and toes, maybe stretching your neck from side to side, arching and rounding your back, a seated cat and cow if you're familiar with yoga. And finally, opening your eyes. Welcome back. And thank you for taking that journey with me. That guided meditation includes the 10 steps of Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing. It is a Japanese practice of creating an authentic relationship with nature. And while we experienced this meditation in our homes or offices or conference rooms today, these 10 steps here, practiced outdoors in nature, can be helpful with alleviating stress, finding clarity and focus, and restoring mental, spiritual, and even physical health. If attendance numbers at our national and state parks and the overflowing parking lots at trailheads are any indication, more and more people are turning to nature for recreation and relaxation. Forest bathing takes your time in nature to another level, allowing you to connect with both nature and yourself. You can do it with a guide. You go to ANFT, stands for Association of Natural Association. Oh my gosh, I can't remember what it stands for now. ANFT.earth. The Association of Natural and Forest Therapy. ANFT.earth. You can find a local to you guide who can take you out into the woods and lead you through a guided practice of forest bathing. Or with these 10 steps right here outlined on this slide, you could go do it yourself. You've been through the meditation. You know what the steps are. You can go out and get yourself back into that frame of mind and experience nature, connect with nature, and connect with yourself. These are my resources, drawn insights and inspiration. These are all books that I'd already read. And then I became this master naturalist and I started going out into the woods even more, and I'm just things that I've read, I'm connecting with things that I'm seeing, and that was the inspiration. These books and my experiences out in the woods are what brought me to you today. So with that, I will entertain questions that folks may have.
Beth, I'm getting quite a few
Okay.
thank yous for a very enjoyable session, but we do have a few questions.
Okay.
First question is, does forest bathing have to be a solitary experience, or can I go with a group?
That is a great question. And if you were to go with a guide, the chances are the guide may lead a group out into the setting, but the experience itself is personal. So whether you go individually, or you go with a guide, or you go with a guide with a group, or you take a group of people out into the woods and say, hey, let's try this thing I heard about in this webinar. The experience is individual. It's a good question. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is, I need a squirrel or a mentor. How can I find one?
You need a squirrel. The best thing to do is look up and around at those folks that inspire you, those folks that you continually realize you're learning from, even though you weren't being intentional about it. I mentioned Julie Brown as one of my squirrels. Julie is a business development professional. I'm on her email newsletter, and I realized about 4 months ago that I was looking forward to getting her email every week, and that I was really gleaning some really great lessons from her content. I enjoy listening to her podcasts, and I know Julie from going to IRAPA for many years, and I don't know that I've expressly said to her, hey, you're my squirrel or one of my squirrels, but I found her, and it was a realization. So think about those folks that you're looking to for inspiration. Think about those folks who are in positions that maybe you aspire to, and reach out and make that connection and say, hey, I would love a little bit of your time to just talk. You know, a few minutes of their time and the wisdom of their years. And, you know, a mentorship does not need to be a lifelong commitment. Sometimes they wind up being. You really click with somebody, but there are squirrels out there. And as much as you may need a squirrel, there's someone who needs you too. There's a little baby acorn out there looking to grow. So you can be a squirrel and you can be an acorn at the same time.
Okay, thank you. And we have one more question said, would you mind putting up your resource page back up again? I was writing and didn't get all of the titles to that.
Sure, there we go. So Healing Trees by Ben Page is, you know, it's a teeny tiny little book. You can throw it in a day pack or a fanny pack, take it with you out to the woods and lead yourself through the practice of forest bathing. 7 habits. If you haven't done APA's Leadership Academy Level 1 yet, you are missing out because it's a great class. But the book too is just, I read the book before I ever took the class, and it, no matter how many times you read that book, you're always going to learn something new or a new way to apply it, right? The Thing with Feathers, The Surprising Lives of Birds and What They Reveal About Being Human is a really, really cool book. There are bird behaviors that I never even knew these birds did these things, but the way that the author is able to relate them to what we do as humans is very, very cool. It actually, if you get it as an audiobook, it makes for a great audiobook for a road trip with family, especially kids, because, you know, kids like birds, right? You can use it as an educational opportunity for your next long road trip. And the cool thing is the chapters, you know, you can listen to one chapter and be done with one bird, and then, you know, put on some tunes for a little while and then come back. And then The Coffee Bean, great book about, it's a very simple lesson. Take that time between stimulus and response to decide how you're going to respond. to the hot water or the forest fire. It's a book that I purchased and circulated among my old team when I was at Physical Plant because it's a super quick read and really great information, really relatable for everyone.
Well, that's the end of all of our questions. So, Beth, I want to say thank you very much personally for taking me to my happy place. And I'm, like I said, I'm getting lots of thank yous, you know, in the chat box as well. So
Sure.
as we close today, I had, people are just basically saying thank you. Thanks for the fantastic information. I will apply what I have learned. So, Beth, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And
Thank
to
you
our
all,
attendees,
Tim.
and to our attendees, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. So until next time, be safe, stay healthy, and be kind to one another. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.